Here is what the United States Constitution actually allows you to do. If you are poor and you want to improve your standard of living, the Constitution actually allows you to do the following things. Let's say you are a simple laborer who has gone into a customer's home to install a tile floor in their bathroom. The house looked something like this. It's a rich house. But as a simple laborer, you can never afford a house like that. Here are some of the options available to you to ensure you become as rich as the people you work for. You can threaten to kill the customers so they get scared and pay you triple or quadruple what your labor is worth. You can send them messages, whether physical or electronic, depicting and describing the most violent acts that you'll perform on them unless they give you money. Such things are protected by the First Amendment as free speech. You can send them videos of drug cartel guys cutting off someone's head with a chainsaw while they are alive, and claim that you will do that to their children unless they make you rich, and it's all protected by the First Amendment. It's free speech. You can also organize homeless people against people who live in houses like this. In your spare time, you can walk along Skid Row and hand out flyers to homeless people, calling on them to show up at a certain house at such and such a time and date in order to pillage the house so the homeless people in tent cities can steal the valuables of people who live in houses like this. Then, when 200 homeless people surround the house and start shouting threats and harassing messages at the family living inside, the police still can't intervene. The Constitution is so far protecting this freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. 200 homeless people can assemble on a public sidewalk in front of a private home and shout threats at the private home to kill the family inside unless they bring out the money and the valuables. You can't be jailed for handing out the flyers to organize the whole thing, because those flyers are freedom of speech. Now, if conveniently a few homeless guys in that group are crazy enough to actually storm the house and pillage it, only they can go to jail for theft, but not the organizer of the event. Another thing you could legally do under the Constitution is arm every one of those homeless with a gun. If you can get the money to buy 200 pistols, you can give out the pistols as gifts to the homeless people, so they can come with every one of them armed for this event. The Second Amendment protects the right to bear arms, which means anyone from a child to an elderly person can buy a firearm with no barriers and no questions asked. You can also organize conspiracies to overthrow the government. You and a gang of several hundred people can discuss and draw up plans to overthrow the government. That's free speech and freedom of assembly. You can vlog the entire conspiracy and post it on YouTube for entertainment. You can also arm yourselves to the teeth in order to accomplish it. You can also stride toward the White House as an army on public streets and besiege the place. You can surround the White House and say you will kill the president if he steps out. Any law enforcement that shoots at you, you'll be able to shoot back at them, so it's guaranteed that it will be a suicide mission for the cops to engage in such a firefight. Most cops will just say fuck it and walk away. So the free speech allows you to threaten the president. The right to bear arms allows you to wave a gun in the air as you threaten the president. And the freedom of assembly allows you to surround the public sidewalk around the White House in a kind of siege scenario, where the president is scared to leave. The president will have to stay inside under this siege and starve to death, being afraid to leave. You could do the same thing to Tanner Fox, for example, in order to get him to give up his wealth if you are tired of being a poor laborer. Isn't it amazing that the Constitution allows you to do all those things? Free speech allows you, as a 32-year-old boy, to walk up to a sexy 16-year-old or high school girls and ask them for sex. And yet people are so horrified by the scenarios I just depicted, they've allowed laws that make all of what I just depicted highly illegal. And yet technically it's perfectly legal to do all those things. And if you say, oh, but those victims you're attacking, they have the gun rights too, they'll just shoot back at your group. Well, they might, but what is one family going to do against 500 armed homeless people who want the expensive things inside their house so they don't have to be homeless anymore? And besides, what if the family is a bunch of soft pussies and they can't stand the sight of blood and can't even kill in self-defense because maybe they believe in Christianity and that God doesn't want them to be violent, and they would rather pray that you don't hurt them instead of shooting back at you? You might say, no way the Constitution allows that, and you are not a lawyer, and you're not a constitutional scholar, so that makes you full of shit. Well, I don't need to be a fucking constitutional scholar. I just need to be able to read. You read what's in there, and look at the scenarios I depicted, and they are very permissible under the Constitution. You can set ultimatums by using threats to create natural disasters, such as wildfires. The public must pay me money to move to a cooler climate with a wooded area, or I will set a wildfire. You can confess to previous crimes that you kept a secret, the crimes you committed in the past, without fear that the confession will be used to put you in jail, because such a confession is just you exercising free speech. In my interpretation of the Constitution, basically, the First Amendment protects any sequence of sounds your mouth might produce. It also protects any lines that your pen might draw on a piece of paper. Or it also protects any sequence of letter keys that your fingers might press on a keyboard, all without exception. And if that's so, then all the examples I've given are legal. And that means the tyrants that are currently in power wouldn't last a day if they actually respected the Constitution.